Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today I have with me Angela Healy, who is the co-owner and CEO of Avenue West Managed Corporate Housing. Angela, it is great to have you here with us on the Voice of Influence podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
So, managed corporate housing, can you tell us a little bit about what your business model really is?
Absolutely. Avenue West is a franchise network of real estate brokerages focused on renting executive corporate rentals. So we are empowering property owners that own their property that might typically rent them unfurnished. We're giving them the opportunity to bring it into our program for us to manage it and rent it to our corporate clients that are looking for shorter term accommodations, 30 plus days. And we provide that service to both parties because typically they would not find each other, as the corporations aren't going to look at an individual for renting a property, whereas the property owners wouldn't necessarily be able to get to the corporate clients into their property. So it's kind of a win-win for both parties in that the corporations, we think, are getting a better property because they're getting a fully managed property that's within our system that follows all of our guidelines and protocols, that is a traditional home, or maybe it's a townhome or a condo versus our competition, which rents apartments. So it's a much better experience for the end user. And then secondly, it's a win for the investors as they're able to get a higher rental rate than they would if they were renting it unfurnished.
That is really interesting. So the people, I'm assuming that there is a lot of need for this right now with the housing market the way that it is.
Absolutely. So I know during COVID, everybody thought that corporate housing, had a major slowdown, and we did as an industry. But we were able to adapt with our properties, as so many people were living in a highly dense area and wanted to move out of that area to protect themselves and their families. So we were able to adapt our business model and provide our homes or townhomes to these relocating people to avoid the pandemic. So we were actually able to adapt and adjust. And then now that the housing market is going so strong, it's very difficult for a family to purchase a home if they have a contingent offer. So a lot of people are selling their homes in advance of purchasing to make themselves a better buyer. And so they're living in homes like ours that are fully furnished, so they're not moving their furniture and then moving it again. It just provides for a lot easier transition and the ability to move quickly as well.
So you have been recognized as being a fast growing company, am I right?
We are. We last year we were on the Inc. 5000 list at number 435.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We're the 15th fastest growing real estate brand in the United States as well. So very excited about that recognition. It's a lot of hard work that went into it, and so all of our franchisees really deserve credit for that.
Well, what do you think really is something that's really helped you with the success of this business?
So Tim and I, we own the franchise, but we also own.
And Tim is your husband, right?
I'm sorry. Yes, Tim is my husband. Yes, but we also own the Denver location. That was the original kind of flagship office where this whole concept started. And we still retain ownership of that Denver franchise, even though now it's considered a company-owned franchise. And I think that allows us to still be in the day-to-day, and we're experiencing what our franchisees are experiencing. So we're able to take a look at it from a true perspective of, yes, we are in the middle of this as well, so we can help our franchisees better. And I think that that's really resonating well with a lot of our franchises.
And who are the typical people who end up buying franchises then? Because it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship with them. And then you also have a small team. Is that right?
That is correct. So the typical franchise is either someone who has come from the corporate housing industry and wants to do something different, or it's a real estate agent who's looking for a little more stability in their line of business. So what we're providing to real estate agents is a monthly recurring revenue with the rentals. But it also feeds their real estate business because as people are relocating to the area, sure, they're going to stop in your temporary housing, but then they're going to need permanent housing afterwards. So you can turn that into a residential sale as well. Or if you have investors that want to come into your program, you can help them find the correct properties that really do well in your program and help them with that real estate sale. Or maybe they need to sell a property. So there's a lot of real estate transactions that go on within our network of influence. So it provides them with a nice lead generation sources as well.
Hmm. Okay, so you mentioned your husband and that you
Yes.
are co-owners, I believe. Talk to me about this relationship because I've heard of some folks that really stay away from having family relationships in these businesses, and then others who look at their life as sort of this whole integrated whole and talking about it all the time or whatever. I mean, like, what is it like for you guys to be working together on a business and still having a home life?
Exactly. Well, it's actually been really wonderful. Tim and I, we were originally married with separate jobs, and we were really not seeing very much of each other. I mean, we get home in the evening and have dinner and a couple hours together, and then we were off spending the majority of our time at our jobs. And sure, we were making a living, but we weren't making a life together. And so the opportunity came where we were able to do this together, and we really jumped at that opportunity. And it has proved to be the best thing that we've ever done. Now, certainly we have our own job duties. He does this and I do this so that we're not always on top of each other. But then we get to celebrate together. We also get to when one of us is having a bad day, I'm going next door to the next office, and it's my best friend who's right there to help give me advice or help me through whatever challenges I'm working with. And there's no judgment. I think that's the best part of it, is that he's able to give me honest advice without worrying about the judgment or how is someone going to perceive this, or we just know each other that well. And so it's really made for a wonderful working opportunity. The other thing that it allowed us to do was 7 years ago, or almost 8 now, we had twin boys. And we were able to kind of job share in the beginning, where one of us would be at work and the other one would be home with the children, so that we didn't have to put them through daycare. And we were able to raise our children the way that we wanted them raised and be a part of such a fundamental part of their lives. And it is a time frame that I would have never wanted to do differently. It was amazing to raise them that way. So.
Wow, that sounds really ideal. How long had you been married before you started your business? Do you mind sharing that?
Sure. So we were married about 3 years before we started the business.
Okay, that's impressive
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like, and this is just a very like personal kind of on the side. This is so not a business conversation. It kind of is. But I mean, I've seen a lot of people go, like get married, and then it takes a good 7 years before they really feel that sense of relaxation with their partner.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not always that quickly that people feel comfortable and feel like they can go to the other person without being judged and that sort of thing. So that must say something about the foundation that you laid at the beginning too.
Yeah, I would definitely think so. And, we had both been married previously. So I think when we found each other, we both knew we were the ones that we wanted. So it was a very quick realization, because we had both kind of been there, done that, knew what we didn't want, and then we found what we wanted in each other.
All right. So, what are the different roles that the two of you play then as co-owners?
So Tim's background was in HR management. He managed 500 people call centers and did a lot of HR activity and employee development and those kind of items. My background, I came from commercial lending. I was a banker for Wells Fargo Bank, First Interstate Bank, and then Silicon Valley Bank. And my strengths are more in operation, accounting, finance, those kind of arenas. So we've been really able to kind of divide the jobs between those.
Okay. And then I know that you said at the beginning that you also have both a team and you have the franchisees, that it sounds like you need to maintain relationships and a sense of community or whatever it might be in both of those realms is what I understand.
Absolutely.
Can you
It
tell us a
is.
little bit of the difference between, working with your franchisees versus what your team might need, that sort of thing?
Oh, absolutely. So the team itself, it's a traditional employer-employee relationship. So what are their goals individually, and how do we want each one of them to grow within our company? Um, you know, our employees have been, I mean, we've added people along the way, but our oldest and or longest tenured employees have been with us for over 15 years. We really try to develop a true family relationship with them, and provide full benefits and everything that we can to make this another home for them. I mean, they're spending so much time here. We want everyone to enjoy who we're with. And then from the franchisee perspective, they own their own company, and so it's a much different relationship because they are their boss, but yet they still have to kind of follow the guidelines of what we're putting together for the overall brand, so that each office ends up, you know, being kind of a mirror image of the other one, but then with their own personality. And so how do we kind of direct and guide them in terms of their strengths, their weaknesses? So some of them may come in and they are a real estate agent before, so they're very comfortable with the buying and selling, but they might not be as comfortable with the corporate housing and the rentals, and or maybe they're not as comfortable with the accounting or or the marketing, the different pieces that come along with it. And so we assess their strengths and provide them with the pieces to help fill together their weaknesses.
Mm.
And then also help them find the employees that they need, or the property owners that they need, or the tenants that they need. So it's really a very two-way street with regards to the franchises.
So I've talked to a lot of folks who own businesses or an entrepreneurship, or they're the CEO, and there's usually a good amount of personal development that takes place for them, not just professional development. I think there's always that learning curve that you go through as a CEO, but even personally. And I'm just curious, is there anything that you have noticed in yourself or in your marriage where you guys have really grown personally that you would be willing to share with us?
Absolutely. I started out my career in commercial lending, as I had mentioned to you, and felt like I was going to do that for the rest of my life. I mean, literally, when I was 5 years old, my dad asked me what I want to be, and I wanted to be a banker. I was great at Monopoly, and I always wanted to be a banker. And as I got into it, I certainly excelled in it. But what I found was I was always doing something for somebody else. And while, yes, I was growing my net worth, or, whatever it might have been, um, ultimately, I was always doing it for them versus for me. And the opportunity came for me to move to Denver and establish myself as a real estate agent and begin to look at it for me and myself, and how did I want to grow that. What came with that was I left a very large institution that had tons of training and opportunities for me to grow within that organization. And I had to reach out and figure out how I was going to continue to grow, because I want to grow every day. But how was I going to do that within an environment where I was a company of one? And and a lot of it has been reaching out to the resources that are available to us in our areas. I joined a CEO group. I'm in Vistage, and looking at the city of Denver. What does Denver have to offer to developing companies? Is it the chamber? Is it different groups that you might be a part of? And networking with other CEOs, and what do they see? What are the things that I should be looking at? And really continuing to do that training each month, taking something different and learning something new about that. And whether it's a speaker that comes in and talks to me about it, or whether it's something that I'm looking at online. I do tend to get more out of the speaker relationship versus the online courses, but that's just more my personality.
And is there anything in particular that you grew in through all that work that you did?
Mostly, I think patience.
That's
think
interesting.
when I was young, I wanted everything, and I wanted everything right now. And sometimes I was missing the journey along the way. I needed to take the opportunity to stop and say, oh, hey, look what I just did. And was it good? Was it bad? Celebrate the wins. Take a look at what I did wrong and try to learn from that so that I wouldn't do that again. And that's one of the things that I love about the franchise so much is, you're buying into my experiences or the company's experiences. What have we all experienced? And how do we keep a brand new franchisee from falling into those 20 pitfalls that we hit along the way, so that they can grow their business faster and smarter?
Thank you for sharing that. Because I think patience is a huge thing. It's hard because if you are ambitious, which most CEOs are,
Yes.
then there is this desire to move, keep growing, keep achieving.
Yes.
But like you said, if you don't celebrate the actual wins along the way, it can start to feel like, when is enough?
Yeah.
Not so much because you want to stop, but when am I going to allow myself to feel the success?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And if you don't, then you're always chasing, and you're never going to feel the success. You've got to stop and have those wins along the way and celebrate them with your team. That's the other thing that's so important. If you get so ambitious that you're only always looking at the next thing, then your team never has a sense of accomplishment. Like, we did this major thing and my CEO is proud and happy for me for completing that. So you have to stop and celebrate with them as well.
So in the past couple of years, obviously we've gone through a lot, and, pandemic, political unrest, people, great resignation, now war in Europe, so many things that people are having to deal with. When you think of yourself as a leader and the shifts that have taken place, do you also see any shifts that are needed in leadership right now?
Definitely. I mean, I don't think you can ever sit on status quo, even if it seems to be really good at the moment. You have to be always learning and developing and adapting to new environments around you, or else what is great will no longer be great anymore. So I do think you always have to be adapting. One of the things that we look at, and I know people talk about the Great Resignation, and we actually thrive in change. So a couple of things. One, potential franchisees. People are assessing their own current situation and saying, hey, could I be doing this differently? And is owning my own company something that I want to take on? And should I do it as part of a group of people who are doing the same thing that I am, just in a different state? or a different city, and then have that network of opportunity around them. So that's an opportunity for us as a franchise. But then secondly, corporate housing itself always thrives on change. So when people are moving, or people are doing a different job over here, or doing something different over here, that involves a change in their residence, whether it's temporary or going to be permanent. And that's our business, is helping people find places to stay in their temporary situation.
So since you thrive on change, how does that impact the what you do with your team, or what you do with the franchisees that helps, that maybe a little, are you noticing anybody struggling, or that sort of thing too,
Yeah, and I think as a people, as just people in general,
Yeah.
they don't like change. They like
Yeah.
their consistency and their routine and their pattern. And so, we're kind of at that crossroads. We love change in our work, but yet we don't like it in our personal life. And so how do we adapt to that, and how do we keep our employees adapt to that? And it is an ongoing battle. Just a new reservation software comes out, or a new piece of software that we can use, and you have to train people on it, and they're like, no, I like the old. And but it offers so many more benefits that you're like, please try it, please, and really trying to put that through in the system. And it is always a struggle. And I think that's one of the things that Tim does very well for our organization, is that he's so used to working with people and adapting to their needs and their desires, that he's able to kind of work them through some of the changes and things that we're pushing.
When you think about this stage of the pandemic and where we're at right now with everything, what do you think that CEOs should really be focused on at this point? Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. You need to understand your own strengths, but then more importantly, you need to understand your team. Right now, with everybody really concentrating on, okay, is this the right job for me? Should I be looking at another opportunity? CEOs need to really be focusing on their teams and saying, we know you're the right person for this, so we need to incent and keep you happy within the position that you're operating for us, or else you're going to lose those team members. And so, when we're looking at our core employees here at the headquarters, what are we doing to prioritize them and to make them feel like this is the job that they want to stay in? And then on the flip side, when we're looking at the franchise, of course, they've bought into their own ownership. And so how do you keep them motivated to continue with that company versus saying, oh, well, there's a job over here that Amazon is offering, and I forget the number that the press release said, $350,000 to come and join our company. So how do you keep them focused on, continuing to build their own entity?
Have you found any particular ways to help build the connection? I mean, I know that, you've got franchisees all over. Are they connected with one another, and how do they connect? Your team, how do you connect as a team too? Because what I've heard a lot lately is just that human connection is something that workers want, that people want out of their jobs. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
So right, actually, when the pandemic started, we instituted a weekly Wednesday Zoom meeting. And the Zoom part of it, I think, was so important because everyone is seeing each other's faces. Because originally everyone, was working from home, and are we going to ever see anybody again? And having that face-to-face connection was so important. But then I think everybody started realizing, oh, look, we're all going through the exact same thing. Are we going to be able to keep our properties full? Are we going to be able to keep our investors happy? How do we get a PPP loan? So we were all going through the same things, just within our own individual companies and our own cities. And that really brought us together. And one thing, Tim and I always try to look for silver linings in things that happened. And obviously the pandemic was, one of the worst things that's ever happened to our mankind. But how do we find silver linings? And one of those silver linings was, as a group, we actually connected better than I think we ever would have had we not gone through that challenge together.
Interesting. Can you tell me more about what that connection looked like that was so powerful?
I think it was just that they weren't alone. We
Yeah.
were all in this together, and we could say and ask questions on these calls and not feel like we were going to be condemned for asking the question. And each one of us was experiencing very similar things. So when one of the franchisees said, "Hey, I'm seeing this trend, go look for it in your area," they were able to then turn that piece around for their area too. So there was no competition with what we were doing. We were really there to help each other and to help the brand survive. And I think that gave that comfort level that I'm not going to be judged for what I say in this meeting, that everyone else really is experiencing very similar things to me.
Yeah. There is something really powerful about having something to fight for, not necessarily to fight against, but to fight for. And it sounds like that's kind of what you guys experienced in particular.
Absolutely. I mean,
Hmm.
one of the first things we did when the pandemic started was Tim and I stopped selling new franchises. And we said, look, this is our core group, and we need to make sure that everyone in this core group survives this experience and thrives through it, not just survives.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that led to that fastest growing company award, was that we really did that internal focus. And we said, okay, what are the, I don't know what the list is. What are the 10 things that we need to do to really survive and thrive through this and grow our company through this? And for all of us to come out better than we were before.
That's cool. That's very cool. Um, what do you see as your number one challenge as a CEO here looking at 2022?
Really not taking any moment for granted, really looking at each relationship that I have, each opportunity that we have, and really trying to expand on each one of those opportunities. And probably in 2020, we're also looking at really growing a lot of the opportunities that we're giving to the franchisees. So, is this the right software? Is this the right marketing? Is this the right website? Is it, all the different pieces that we're offering, and providing best of class service for all those pieces.
So have you shifted back to actually selling more franchises now,
We
or?
are.
Okay.
We're just starting again. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Very
We
good.
feel like we're far enough through this that that we could easily add additional cities onto the offering, and corporations are out purchasing our product again, and so they're starting new projects, new opportunities are opening up, and we're actually seeing different activity in different cities. So we're looking for some new people to join us.
Well, I would imagine that just hearing how you and how you put such a focus on taking care of what you had before, would be comforting to those who were considering an opportunity like this.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what would you say is one of your greatest opportunities in 2022?
When I look at my passion for selling Avenue West to other potential franchisees, it's because I take what I have learned and saw that it worked for my family and the opportunities that it gave my family, and I want to give that to other people as well. How did they create their own company? How did they give their family the opportunities that I've been able to give mine? And as we grow the franchise, it only exponentially helps each one of our franchisees. So that's really what I'm looking forward to in the year to come.
All right. Well, this has been a really fun conversation, Angela, and I have two more questions for you. The first one is, how can people find you or find your company?
We're on the website. Our website is avenuewest.com.
And so the last question has to do with being a voice of influence. So the way that we see being a voice of influence is that it's somebody who develops their voice. They clarify their mission. They build into their team. They're very intentional and they care about people. When you think of those who are listening, who want to have a voice of influence, what advice do you have for them?
Really understanding what your role is in the entire organization and really listening to your employees or your constituents, your customers, your franchisees, whoever it might be. And remember that everyone is here trying to not just make a living, but make a life for themselves. And how can you be a part of their story and providing them with some guidance or influence on what they're doing with their life?
Well, thank you so much for being a voice of influence for our listeners today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.